dir noch angesäche, so bist du ihr aller Ehre. Was ist Wundes hier geschäche? Dass ein Magd ein Kind gebar, ihre über aller Engel Schar. Was das nicht ein Wunder gab.
This is The New Right, a podcast for the lost arts, reclaiming the literary holy land from the heathen. This is Dan Baltic, and we do not have Matt with us right now. He may be jumping on halfway through. He is back fighting in Ukraine, but we wish him luck. And if there's a break in the hostilities, he will jump on the pod. And we are very lucky to have today with me Bennett's Phylactery, who we've wanted to have on for quite some time. And he's a man that, needs no introduction on our side of the culture, the internet, what have you. But nevertheless, I will introduce him. He is an author, podcaster, and crucially the founder of Exit Group, which is a very interesting organization which does many things, which we're going to get into. But among them, it provides a way that men can take sovereignty over their lives and form a life outside of the mainstream professional and I suppose broader culture, and form competing institutions. And so this is very helpful if you're, for instance, let's say a podcaster who, if he's doxxed, will run into trouble, like myself. I'm referring to myself here. But take it away, Bennett. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I love it when somebody else does the job of summing up what Exit is for me. Because it's we have big dreams, and so yeah, it's definitely about sovereignty. It's about and it's not about retreat. It's about taking back control and retreating from situations that are making you weaker. I think about the guy who, there's this constant argument on Twitter that's like, stop telling these guys to abandon their positions of influence in these companies. And it's like, there's maybe like 500 of our guys who are in those kinds of situations, and they know that they should abandon those positions. And the rest of us who are like project managers at Amazon, like the idea that you think you're gonna have more of an influence on that than it's gonna have on you, or that the math in any way makes sense, is to me absurd. And
Absolutely.
So it's and I mean, one of the ways that you create leverage in a situation like that is you build an I mean, this is MBA talk, but they have a thing called BATNA, your best alternative to negotiated agreement. And the more attractive your BATNA is, the more leverage you have in that negotiation. And so
absolutely,
whether or not you choose to abandon your project manager job at Amazon or whatever it is, having a better alternative, like either you can go take that alternative and go do something else and be happy that way, or you can push back at your Zog job, your Global Homo job, and say, I'm not doing this and I can leave tomorrow. And so
absolutely,
and maybe, enough people in that situation, maybe that does move the needle.
Yeah, it gives you bargaining power, and that's the most important thing. Like, I was my girlfriend's a lawyer, and I was talking to her, as am I, about what it takes to become partner at a firm. And one of the ways, if you're at a very big firm, is to just be a company man and do everything they tell you to do, And, frankly, when your clients are very big banks, they're the firm's clients. They're no one in particular's client. So you do everything they tell you to do, and maybe they make you partner, probably not, but that's what you're aiming for. But at smaller firms, frankly, most other firms, it's by having clients. And when you have clients, that creates, like you say, optionality, because then it's the firm. You don't need the firm. The firm needs you. So you could just walk away with the clients. And maybe it's, maybe it's harder for you in some respects. It will be, because you won't have the support staff, but also you have more freedom. You have more, there's a lot of alternatives. Or you could be with the firm and you are the one who brings them that money. So they want you, they need you. And I think that kind of applies to what we're talking about here, because if you have your own clients, if you have your own business, you're free in a way that, provided you have the right type of clients, you're free in a way that most people are not. And yeah.
And if you've got one client that's your client, that just means you have a different boss, right? Your boss absolutely is the client. It's about capital. Your book of business that's yours is capital. And so you're looking for opportunities, ways to make money that make your capital as mobile as possible. So and a software developer can be that. If you're a web design guy, then it's just you and your laptop and your ability to sell and the quality of your portfolio. And you don't really need a ton of infrastructure behind you. If you're a big data backend systems guy, then it's well, I need to go find a way to fit into a big machine, because that's the kind of machine that I know how to tend. But there's also ways for those guys to become fractional or contract based. And so it's not necessarily it's more sophisticated than we all go start businesses or we all go become tradesmen or whatever. It's more just, how do you do what you do in a way that your capital follows you, meaning the tools you need to do your job.
Yeah. So in a sense, becoming more anti-fragile, to use a term that has been tossed around, so you can say what you want to say. I don't foresee a world right now where all of us can, forget our doxes and just be I'm going to say what I want to say. And my name is, my name. But no, that's not the near. But to just have the freedom, and I don't have this right now, to not worry so much that, I'm saying what I want to say. I'm participating in this kind of this movement, this thing of ours, and to not, in the back of your mind, be well, I am facing the prospect of financial ruination. And so that's, to the extent you're navigating these waters, that's a great thing you're doing. And I was listening to your pod episode, your year-end recap, where you got into the mission statement, because I understand you started Exit in 2021, so it's been around a little over a year, and you did a kind of recap of where you are. And you discussed, and I found this particularly instructive, the difference between if you're in a regime that is inhospitable to your interests, and I think that's where most of us find ourselves, you have two options, and one of which is to vocalize, which is to make complaints and hope they redress them. And I think we all kind of understand that that's not going to happen. Barring, I don't know what happens in 2024, but even then, it's the, regime has so captured all of our institutions. It's just, I don't really know how that would work. And the other alternative that you mentioned, and that is the driving, MO of this group, is to exit, which is to withdraw your participation from the system. So that could be anything as innocuous as workers quitting so they don't have to participate in vax mandates. And then lo and behold, the vax mandates go away because they need the workers. Or it could be something as, exit could be something as existential as Cubans tying tires together and making rafts to try to make the perilous journey to Florida. And so there's two kind of ways you could go there when you're in a regime that is inhospitable to your interests. And maybe you could speak more about that.
Yeah. So, and what's, again, these are not competing alternatives. It's not you either exercise voice or you exercise exit. The point of the theoretical point of the democratic process is that our voices matter because there's this implicit statement that the people determine the legitimacy of the government. And so it's intended to be a form of collective, it's sort of a collective threat. Like, hey, we voted you out, and if you don't leave, we've got this institution that allows us to remove you, and you will not be in power anymore because we decide if you're in power. And
Absolutely.
that is voice and exit, right? That's ultimately what we mean by exit is like if we're all in a room and everybody in that room leaves except you, like we've expelled you. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Kind of like when you owe the bank $1 million, the bank owns you. When you owe the bank $1 trillion, you own the bank.
Right.
And, a similar type of thing there.
Yeah. And so when a factory labor force gets together to organize a strike, they're not saying we don't want to be auto workers anymore. What they're saying is you need to pay us better, give us better hours, or give us better conditions, or whatever. It's a threat, and you have to mean it. Which means you have to be prepared for the eventuality that you do get fired. You also have to be prepared to wait them out. Like you have to have your siege food storage, right, so to speak, so that you can survive the period where you're not working. But it is exit being the muscle behind voice.
Absolutely.
Right, because then you go have the negotiation, and maybe we figure something out.
Yeah, get a better deal.
Yeah, and when you look at most of the peasant rebellions tend to fail, but even oligarchic or aristocratic rebellions, it's a spotty record, but they don't. It is not always the case that what happens is they throw out the old guy and they install a new guy. A lot of times what happens is that just the deal is renegotiated.
Yeah.
We're going to, King John signing the Magna Carta. They didn't depose King John. They said, these are the rules that we play by now, you and me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you could really see that happening. I mean, as America becomes increasingly two camps, you could see a renegotiation of terms. And I think we already see that in some of the actions of some of our governors kind of refusing to go along with the federal, if not directives, suggested protocols or whatever. And we see governors and other officials taking sovereignty on a local level. And how much more powerful would that be if we had groups of our guys who were united and were able to kind of band together and say, yeah, we're not. And like a good example of this, I mean, maybe not a great example because it didn't entirely work. It was the truckers protest. But I mean, like that was, that was collective action. That was, groups of people with common interests getting together. And, frankly, the government, the Canadian government, had to take out hard power, which was just canceling people's bank accounts, which is just like, that really kind of takes the mask off. And that is a failure. That was a defeat for them, I think, because you see this is not a democratic system you're part of anymore. This is a system where one party has oligarchic control and you're at their mercy. And so you have to do stuff like exit to reclaim your sovereignty.
So much of their power is wrapped up in ordinary people believing that they have a voice.
Yeah.
And believing that they're in control of things. And that if they really wanted to, they could go out and hold their signs and make change. And when you show people that is impossible,
yeah,
we're not going to storm the Bastille tomorrow, but it makes a difference. Chipping away at that legitimacy, chipping away at that lie, frankly, makes a difference. And with the trucker protests, I think all the time about what is the optimum trade-off between power that we could accumulate and exercise and the immune response that will trigger on behalf of the enemy.
Good heuristic there.
Like the trucker protest, that was a big muscle move on behalf of the truckers.
Yeah.
And it also demanded a really intense response from the state. And it's kind of like, there's sort of a theory that if two states go to war, it's because somebody's wrong about the power math.
That's
right?
a good point. Yeah.
You don't go to war if you know you're going to lose.
Absolutely.
Being defeated is way worse than whatever tension, whatever grievance, existed before you lost the war.
Yeah.
And I think the trucker protest was an example of just a miscalculation. We thought they would back down. They didn't back down.
Yeah.
We thought we could hold out. We couldn't hold out.
Yeah. Or better yet, you do something that you think will not instigate a war, but it does. You do something that you think will cause the other side to back down. So I'm thinking Pearl Harbor, like they thought like that would cause the U.S. to say, oh no, we're, fuck that. But
right.
No, in actuality, Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, so that was perfect. And I was like, oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
we're good to go now.
Yeah, and so when I think about what could you do if you had committed people, you have to understand that like protest is an exercise of power. It's not a way of building power. Protest is what you do when you have captured the instruments of public propaganda so that your protest, like a protest is something that is an excuse for MSNBC and CNN to create a narrative.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you are not in charge of MSNBC and CNN, then whatever, it's one of two things will happen. And this is why you never talk to journalists in general. You never talk to journalists because if they make you look stupid, they're going to run it. And if you make them look stupid, they're just going to bury it. There's no win condition for you. And protest is basically just a conversation with the media. And
absolutely.
So what I look at when I think about guys, having lots of people and lots of potentially people in positions of influence, it's about how do we use that network to get people into better employment positions? How do we use that network? I mean, potentially even to flip local elections. If you had 500 guys go knock doors in some jurisdiction to turn even a state house seat, that's where you start to build. You have to build smaller, I think. And I think some of that is a recognition of how badly we've lost. Like if you want the GOP to take back the Senate, you're not understanding the depth of the capture.
Absolutely.
Like Mitch is not your bro. He's not your friend.
Yeah. And with the state houses captured, the rule, I think we're increasingly seeing that the rules by which they count the votes, that is more important than I hate to say it, but the quality of the candidate, because Biden wasn't exactly like the superstar. Biden,
most popular president of all time.
I mean, I'm not obviously I'm not an Obama fan, but Biden was no Obama, and nevertheless, he knocked it out of the park.
Blew them all away.
Somehow. To kind of drill back on exit and the way this works for someone who wants to join, what would you recommend for, let's say, your this is a harder one, but let's say you're a lawyer and you work for a firm and you have like maybe the possibility of building a practice, but you don't have a practice of your own. What would you recommend, and how would exit help a person like that? Which I should say is not me. I have my own practice. I'm not, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it would depend on the particulars of like what direction that person wanted to go. But I mean, we do have several lawyers in the tent, some of it at varying degrees of independence. And so what I would be doing is I would be putting them in touch with the lawyers who could help them see other domains in which they could work and be successful. Whether that means, finding a friendly, smaller practice that would be, I could go into a broader conversation about like sovereignty depends on what you want to do, right? Like the German government is sovereign in certain senses. It can do certain things that it wants to do. It has an army, technically, it has an air force, but like there's lots of things that if the German government wants to do it, the American security state and the EU will just say no.
Yeah.
But like, are they more sovereign than me and you? Yes. And so like, for a lawyer, to bring it back to this hypothetical lawyer, it's like, do you want to post like anime edits of the Mustache Man and like Panzers and stuff, because that's a different game than like I'd like to be able to attend a pro-life rally without worrying about my job.
Yeah.
And so like how independent you need to be. Are you going to be Snowden? Are you going to be Assange? Those guys have they're having to deal with state actors and they have to go flee the country. Like they have a totally different math than like you and me and most people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not trying to give you a cop out, it depends answer, but like it would start with what do you want? And then it would be let's sweep the network for everybody who's doing the kind of thing you want to do. And in this case, that would be lawyers and potentially other professionals who've hung out a shingle, accountants and people who run that kind of a practice.
Yeah.
And then it would be on the business development side, like we have a guy who does reputation management and he also does digital marketing specifically for PI lawyers. Like that's his thing. So like it would be, what could you learn from him, even if you're not PI? What could you learn from him that generalizes to developing your own practice? And it would be coming to the calls and taking accountability for your progress because a lot of what you're going to be doing is the blocking and tackling of starting a business. You need to find clients and you need to advertise and build a brand and you need to be making these networking connections. And it's like there's so much that is general to every form of entrepreneurship. And you'd be taking accountability for that stuff week to week in the group. And we'd be connecting you with, and you would be in charge of like, this is the type of person I need to talk to. This is, can anybody help me find this skill set? But the guys who do that, I mean, I'll give you an example. We had a guy who he was a math professor and he was doxxed and fired. And so like math and you know, no code skills. So he's like, he knows math and he knows how to teach math. And it's like, well, you're never going to be an academic again. Sorry. Like the things you said, there's no university in the country that's going to let you. So what could you do? Well, you're smart enough clearly to learn to code. And so he tried like Python and data science for a minute. And he was like, you know, this just doesn't sing to me. I'm not that interested. And this was like months of like working on Python, learning to code. And eventually he's like, you know, I'm not feeling this. So he starts looking into Urbit and blockchain and he starts coding in that. And that's what lights him up. And after about 8 months and working the internal network and the external network, he got a job making, I think 3K, sorry, not 3K, 3 times what he was making as a math professor.
Excellent.
And so it's, I mean, that's, you know, that's my favorite thing in the world. See that kind of thing happen. And so it's about, I mean, some of it's just like a lot of these guys don't sign up because they're like in danger. A lot of these guys have like no online presence at all. They just hate their jobs and hate having to do the DEI stuff and hate having to salute these friggin' people. And so it becomes then how far of a voyage are we trying to take? You know?
Absolutely.
Is this something where you can just do your job independently, or is this something where we got to like go to a whole new industry and you got to learn a whole new skill set like this guy did?
Yeah.
And then it's just, you know, talking to me, talking to the guys, taking accountability. And the biggest thing is like keeping you from giving up, keeping you from like, you know, if you get bored with your plan, and annoyed by it, and it's frustrating, and it's like just like molasses, then we have a deep conversation and we go, all right, why is this not the right thing? And if you're trying to do it alone, 95% of the time, you're just going to be like, well, I'll just suck it up and go back to the job because this sucks and I don't like it. But if you got the guys on the call to be whoa, wait up. Why? You still hate the job just as much as you did, you know, 2 months ago. So why is this not the thing? Let's figure out what the thing is.
Absolutely.
And, anyway, that's how it would work.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you how many times, I mean, Matt and I do this pod together, and, you know, frankly, if it were just one of us, I don't know if we would have made it this far, because like it's a lot of like get up and go that you have to have in you to like do something. And I'm guessing that these people who are trying to set up not new careers, but new opportunities within their existing careers, they're continuing to work. So they're continuing to do their jobs and trying to form that exit opportunity for them. And that's a tremendous energy drawdown. Like to, you know, be a full-time lawyer, which I am, and running the podcast and writing, like, frankly, I'm operating on like, you know, it's always blinking the energy level. So like, it's like you need other people to say, hey, keep it up. You're doing a good job. And so that's one of the things I think that is great about Exit, because like you get to be around other people who see what you're doing, and not to sound too kind of new age or gay here, but who validate you, who are like, that's good on you.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also the element of people will often come to me with like, I want to own a machine shop, which is like, you know, a 6-figure investment.
Yeah.
And they're like, not,
I think.
Yeah. And they're like, not in that, they've never done that kind of work before. And so it's like, let's take a smaller bite. Like if you, what you want to do is, or like a mechanic is a better example. Someone wants to run a auto body shop or something. And you say, all right, what if you went on Craigslist and flipped a lawnmower? You go buy a lawnmower that's not working for $250 and a riding one, and you turn it around for 1,000.
Yeah.
That's
see if you like it.
That's building your business development skills. That's trying out, like, do you actually like all of the elements of running a business, not just turning the wrench, but like developing relationships and buying and selling and having to deal with, like, oh, the part didn't come in and now the client's mad because it didn't get, whatever. Finding the smallest way to test your hypothesis about what you need to be doing with your life. And a lot of times that's side hustles. A lot of times it's if you're busy all the time at your job, then it's like, well, how could what you're doing at your job prepare you to jump off, both by saving money, by are there skill sets that your employer will pay for you to learn that you could take to the next thing? And a lot of times it's pretty expansive, the things that these employers will cover. And a lot of our guys, if you're in a situation where you're like, really, you're working like 2 hours a day and the rest is like looking busy.
Yeah.
Can you negotiate a work from home arrangement? Can you, like, just stop wasting your time? And, and like, what would you like? Okay. So would you need to do some big, project and knock something out of the park at your gay corporate job so that you could then have the pull to negotiate the work from home arrangement, so that you could then have the time to create your, like, it's just, what's the next step? What's the immediate step?
Yeah.
So that's how we work it.
Yeah, no, work from home has been incredibly helpful to our guys for that reason. And like for many reasons, frankly, I do like the idea of having I think we'll get into work from home a little bit more later, but just to say, I do like having an office culture. I do like seeing people, even if they're, libtards or whatever. It's good to, see people in person, but also, like, frankly, a lot of these people, they don't have families, and this is like, it's their work family, and they love being at work because this is like, I think we have an unhealthy work culture in America where people are like, incentivized to just go to work, and that's your life. And especially for women, obviously, a lot of women miss the boat on motherhood because they're in the office throughout their 20s and 30s. And it's just, and that'll get to something we're going to talk about later, which is, where society should place its values. But to drill down into more I think there's a similarity between what New Right is doing and what Exit is doing, in that we're both seeking to create alternatives that are superior to the original, that are superior to the mainstream. So you are trying to create careers and opportunities for men that are better than what they have, that allow them to live their lives better. And at New Right, we're trying to create cultural criticism and create a platform for art and culture that is better than what is being shoveled into our gullets by Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. And every so often there's like a good, good one that gets through, but by and large they're not so good. So I mean, I think
magic time. We're if you're a culture creator right now, you're very blessed in the quality of your competition.
Yes, absolutely. It's like, it's an unbelievable opportunity. And, frankly, I count myself lucky that I saw this and that I jumped on it, and that I saw, like, well, I mean, and I was talking about this on a pod with Robert Stark when I was talking about my novel. And we discussed how the culture industry right now, the right, our, Terror House Press, Passage Prize, all of these different Rogue Scholar Press, so all of these different kind of right-wing or, if not right wing, kind of dissident or out there institutions are drawing people who are not necessarily right wing. They're just artists who are not able to function in the mainstream industry
Right.
because they get censored, they get shut down, and you can't make good art. So
Because
like
they have anything to say.
exactly. And so like I read from my novel Nutcracker at this reading that Terror House Press put on in New York City. And I would say like half the people there probably aren't right wing at all. They're just there because it's a cool party with like people reading cool stuff. And like, is that like not great in terms of gatekeeping and keeping our thing dissident? Well, perhaps, but it is nice to have
The
a
price of winning is that you win.
yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna do?
And frankly, like I don't think there's a man in that room who's like, oh yeah, we get these hot girls out of here. we want fewer of them. No, that's not how it works. So like
Yeah.
it's good because it's drawing like right now in the culture industry there we have something that they don't, which is we have a space where artists can be artists, and that's great. So yeah, I think like you and I both came along at the right time to create these institutions to platform voices and also kind of like issues and create solutions to problems that are unique to this moment in time.
You know what I think happened? I think in our parents' generation, everybody who was of our persuasion by sort of temperament and spirit was able to get the job, get the family, build the life for themselves that was satisfying, and therefore sort of excluded themselves from the cultural conversation. And what I see as like the sort of frog situation 2015 2016 was you suddenly had a group of really, really smart, really, really capable people who were not welcome.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
not there was no place for them. And so the dissident sphere, the cultural right, all of a sudden had these people who had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But write and create and fulminate on the internet. And I think that's part of my target is to take those guys and help them create in a way that they actually can get the good things that we all want. Because ultimately, if the cultural conversation is always and forever dominated by childless, rootless, sort of like, and whether it's because they're on the right and they're like neats and they're they haven't, either because they're weird guys or because the culture shut them out. Like if it's a conversation between these childless, rootless weirdos on the one hand, and then like progressive, childless, rootless weirdos on the other hand, that's just a really unhealthy
absolutely
alchemy there. But if you can take some of these guys who, if there was the infrastructure for them to get paid to create and get patronage,
yeah,
then they could enter into this healthier way of life. And then also these guys who, guys like me who, found a wife, had a job, had kids, were sort of able to fit into that environment, and then had no energy and no place to put our sort of creative output.
Yeah.
To create a place for us to do that too, so that it's a conversation between childless, rootless weirdos on their side and people who have their shit together on our side. Like that seems like the conversation I want to have.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of takes us to a question about the extent to which our current regime is anti-family and promulgates values that, because I've been formulating this in your pod where you did your year-end recap of Exit. It kind of struck a real chord for me because at times, and we're a cultural criticism pod. I wrote a novel. I'm a writer. I don't really think of myself as a political theorist, but when I am pressed and people ask me what is the good, what is it that you want, I usually reply, I want a political system that that is most conducive to the health of the family, which of course is a heterosexual couple who has children, and that yeah. So like I think the current, for various reasons, the neoliberal economics of like, you have to work all the time. They brought women into the workforce and now they're treated like just like men and worked, like it was one thing in the 40s or 50s. Frankly, men didn't work nearly as much as they did now, white collar men at least. But, even that, you're outside of the home, you're working, but you come home to a family that you have provided for. Your wife had time to cook dinner. It's like it was a happy, healthy, to say nothing of like all of the various psychological and ideological agendas that are pushed upon the children these days. So it just seems like every aspect of the family is under attack by this regime. And so when I think about what is the good, what would I say is a good regime? Well, like someone's got to be in charge. And
Yes.
so the person who's in charge, people who are in charge, law and policy, I think should be guided for what will make happy and healthy families. And to the extent it does not, that's probably something that should be disfavored or even prohibited, I would
That's
say.
minimum viable. Whatever else a culture does, it has to replicate itself.
Exactly.
It has to iterate across time. And that means, you have to be able to find a woman, have sex, have babies, and then you have to raise those babies with a culture that they will find sufficiently compelling that they will go find a woman, have sex, make babies with you, and carry your mimetics, your culture with you, with them.
Exactly.
So any culture that can't do that will die. That's just it's just the evolutionary nature of it.
Yeah.
And so it's not even like, society must be entirely about this one question. It's like, no, whatever else you do, you have to do that.
Yeah.
Like you can be about the Victorian England was radically culturally different from Sparta, but they both got that one job done, right?
Yeah.
And where we're at, basically, we're at this crisis, and I think it has a lot to do with. There's lots of like policy things, but I think also culturally, we're in this environment of hyperstimulus where there are so many things that are engineered to be more appealing than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just the fundamental mismatch of male female interest due to hypergamy, which is, frankly, I don't, there's a lot of, I think, I wrote a novel that is like very offensive, but I think there is too much misogyny on the internet. And like, there's a lot of men who blame women for their behavior, and that's fair to some extent, but also like if you place someone in an incentive system where, they have those incentives and they're like, well, there's no reason for me to settle down with some guy who's just a good provider. I can have my job and run around and do whatever. Like that will, a lot of them will choose that. And I don't know that, they're to blame exactly. I think society is to blame for creating this structure that allows them to do that.
It's structural and cultural, and the structure informs the culture and vice versa. I mean, everything's talking to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And it goes both ways. Every conversation that's like, oh, these women can't, like, why can't they just it's the man up conversation. It's just in reverse.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you man up and act against all these incentives that have been, it's like,
exactly.
well, and the fact is individuals can do that, but the mass is going to respond to the incentives that are created.
Exactly. And when that replicates on a mass level, the problem just is exacerbated. And
right. Yeah. And I think ultimately, in order to, the only way out that I can see is guys who have the personal magnetism to succeed in that domain essentially have to write new laws on new tablets. I mean, they have to be like almost like a cult leader and be so magnetic and so compelling that they show people a different way of living.
Absolutely.
And that, I mean, you're seeing that with this cultural trend of like, well, I'm not really comfortable with all the things these guys are saying, but they're the only people saying anything. They're the only people with anything interesting to offer. Yeah. And I mean, I think to some extent, the job is like, there's an extent to which this thing is going to fall apart because it's predicated on unreality, and it can't sustain itself. And so to some extent, your job is just to survive that until all of the it'd be this ideology selects against everything that makes you embrace it.
Yeah. I mean, they have to continually replace people. So that only lasts for so long.
And I mean, have you seen, like, if you go Google like TFR in Guatemala?
I'm not familiar.
So total fertility rate, that's
I see.
Children per women.
Yeah.
In Mexico, it's below replacement. In Guatemala, it's slightly above. And the line looks like this. So it's like, and I actually take issue with, not like morally take issue, but like I disagree with the people who say like, oh, it's going to be just this Malthusian hell world of like the third world is just going to eat everything like locusts, and then we're going to live in favela planet. What I see happening is they're like 20 years behind us on that slope.
Yeah.
And so the fraction of the population that is going to be, the fraction of the world's population that's going to be in Latin America and Africa is going to continue to grow for a bit. And then it's children of men. everybody just gets old all together, and we all board the ships for Valinor and we go quietly into that good night. Apart from whatever memes or genes makes a person say, fuck that, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And what kills you doesn't always make you stronger. Sometimes it just kills you. But like, if some of us can survive that bottleneck, then our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, they're not gonna be going to school with the great grandchildren of today's shit libs, because those grandchildren.
Absolutely. I was having this discussion with my girlfriend, and she was upset that her friends don't want to have children. And I told her, well, they're shit libs. It's actually maybe good that they don't have children, and that people who are more conservative do have children, because eventually, as you describe, we will outlast them, and they will die off. Not violently, obviously, but
Well,
just
and
be supplanted by people with the right values, provided that you can communicate those values to your children, which is another issue. But I think there are many interesting solutions to that one.
that's the challenge, right? And that's why, when I talk about like what is exit about, it's about grandchildren, not children. Because if you've had grandchildren, you found something that iterates. You found something that your children will pass down. And what's going to happen to our grandchildren's generation, and to some extent our children's generation, is all of these millennials and Zoomers who didn't have kids are going to live to be like 140. and and so it's not this rosy, like, let's just wait them out. Our grandchildren are going to grow up in a world of stiflingly owned and controlled space. It's going to be owned by all of the corporate egregores that sucked up all the money that the millennials and Zoomers built up over their like dual income, no kids life path.
Yeah.
And then it's all going to go to taxes, and it's going to go to like assisted living, the Dominican who smothers them with the pillow in there. and so it's not so much that like our grandchildren are going to be at war with these old people, because who cares? They're old. They're going to be at war with the institutions that ate up all the wealth that those old people didn't have anywhere to put.
Absolutely.
And the money they spent in their terror of death in the last 5 years of their lives. And so they're going to be up against it, and they're going to have to make some really hard decisions about like what exactly is my moral responsibility to the 25 elderly dependents that the state wants to tax me for. Really, like yeah. Because it's not like, oh, this tax is just bullshit, and if I don't pay it, everything will be fine. It's like you're gonna pay. If you don't pay those taxes, people are gonna starve and freeze. Yeah. And there's gonna be a really, really challenging conversation.
Absolutely.
In that generation.
Yeah. And I mean, so much of this is also predicated on continued U.S. dominance. I think there's very good reason to think that the U.S. will continue to more or less dominate the globe into the distant future. But
I mean, that's going to replace them.
Yeah, it very well could not be the case. We are increasingly a multipolar world, and as soon as the dollar no longer becomes the trusted reserve currency, everything here is fucked. So that I mean, there's definitely our children. I do not have children yet, though I plan to. Still got time, 36. Maybe gonna make it happen. But yeah, they will have to potentially inherit a world where they're gonna have some real headwinds.
100%.
So another thing I wanted to move into is obviously we're a literature pod, and I read your short story, which I believe you submitted to Passage, Amira, and I have to say someone in our sphere actually recommended it to me months ago, and I didn't quite get around to it, but like I read it in the past few days. And it's one of the best pieces of writing I've seen come out of our sphere. I was very impressed, very readable. Yeah, no, I mean, great job there. And so just to give a brief, synopsis of it, it imagines a future where robots are the new kind of protected class, androids, And so Amazon has a synthetic android brand that this girl commits a microaggression of sorts against in her law school class. The girl is canceled, and it's the drama surrounding that cancellation. And so, what I think you did very well here is it's an allegory. This story. And so it's an allegory for what is happening today. Well, it's for today, like obviously people are being canceled for saying the microaggressing, which are, not really just sometimes saying things that are true, saying things that 5 minutes ago were fine to say. And so you very expertly nailed down this dynamic where there is a real shifting terrain of rules for quote unquote social justice, and that you can violate these rules very easily, because you would have to be kind of like well they're not really written down. They're like, you would have to be like, spend all your time steeped in kind of like reading the winds about like what is or is not okay to say. And so you illustrate this with the case of this girl microaggressing against the android. And of course, like, that is, not only is it more compelling that way because it illustrates the absurdity, like this is a robot, you should not be able to, okay, there is like an interesting AI question, are robots human, whatever, but let's just, this robot is not particularly human. It memorizes, it's a brute force machine learning robot. And it very well like illustrates the point that these instances where people from certain groups are persecuted by the system for insulting people from other groups, saying or doing things that were not insults 5 minutes ago. When you make it a human and a robot, it casts into stark relief how crazy this whole system is. And also it allows you to write this story without someone saying, hey, wait a minute, this is too whatever. This is, you crossed the line, friend. And so I thought that was a very good use of allegory, very skillfully written. And so just maybe you could tell me your thoughts writing it and your process and all of that.
Yeah, I actually wasn't trying to talk about cancel culture in particular.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It became, it definitely has a lot of that feel. My initial premise was, what if the Terminator was a woman? Because it's not about physical violence. It's about psychological violence.
Yeah.
And the sort of the way that a woman would be psychologically relentless in terms of terrorizing someone versus the way that a male robot would.
Absolutely.
And because ultimately I think that's what cancellation, quote unquote, really is. It's a feminized form of social aggression. It's a feminized way of going to war.
Yeah.
And
it's a tool. It's a tool of oppression, basically.
Well, it's a tool of aggression.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, because I personally think that like there should be social rules. And if you overstep, like, you should be censured.
Sure. Yeah.
The problem is that like it's the most insane people you could possibly imagine who are like in charge of who gets that kind of heat.
Yeah. Well, and centering the wrong values, right? So like
Exactly.
there's good social rules, like if you walk into a bar and you start kissing some other guy's girlfriend, that's, you have crossed the line, and there are going to be repercussions, and that's a good rule.
Yeah. You can pretty much break any free speech absolutist on the rocks of child pornography. Like,
yeah, for
pretty
sure.
much nobody. Yeah. So I think and what I was going for with the why I made it a robot, I actually didn't want it to be a stand-in for like some real world demographic.
Okay.
What I wanted it to be about was, what would cause everybody to embrace a lie that everybody knows is a lie?
Yeah.
It's because I can't remember her name. The robot is essentially Alexa with a body.
Yeah.
Alexa that can walk around, and you can talk to it, and it can get you coffee, and you can have sex with it. And I thought about, like, why would there be humanoid robots? Because like most of the applications, most things we use robots to do is like things that a human shouldn't do, and we wouldn't
Yeah.
ask them to do. And so to make it humanoid, you're asking the user to interface with it as a person.
Yeah.
And basically what I imagined in the story is, like, it's actually probably really bad if you interface with something that's not a person as if it were a person, and you afford it the same privileges and the same respect, and people totally would,
Oh
because
yeah.
they'd feel bad if they,
Absolutely.
were rude to this thing, that, especially if it was like a really pretty girl.
Yeah.
I think you and I, even knowing everything we know, if we looked that thing in the eye and it looked like a girl, we'd be like, well, shit.
Yeah.
And so it's, and what I want to talk about is, like, why would Amazon create this line of robots that are designed to elicit that kind of sympathetic response from human beings? And it's like, well, if you print a billion of them and then you give them the vote, then who's in charge of the democratic process?
It's true.
Amazon is. They write the code. And so anyway, I wasn't trying to make this like direct one-to-one about today. It was more about, like, kind of like, why do we embrace these lies? Why do people who are otherwise intelligent, otherwise decent, why do they go along with this shit?
Yeah.
And the boyfriend character, I thought, like, the purpose of the boyfriend character who cheats on her with the robot is because he's got to have a vision of himself as, like, not a masturbator,
Yeah.
like not just, screwing a kitchen appliance. And so he's like, well, it's because it's a person. It's a real person whose feelings matter, and you should respect that. You need to respect that. And so he gets to, instead of being this like creep, he's got this high horse that he can ride, and of course he's going to ride it.
Yeah.
So
And
anyway, yeah.
And that applies to everyone else. That applies to, the people who make it, who benefit from the votes of the robot. Like, everyone wants to treat this robot as a person, except perhaps the people who are being disenfranchised by the robots. But I mean, they're in the disfavored minority. So,
as they would be.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing it. It's really hard to get time for fiction because it's so cognitively.
Absolutely. Right. So yeah, no, I was thinking maybe we could discuss the our literary culture more broadly. And you submitted this to Passage Prize, and Passage Prize is I think our listeners probably know exactly what it is, but it is a prize that was put together by I don't think it was necessarily put together by, but the original judges were Zero HP, Gio Panischetti, Curtis Yarvin, and Ben Braddock for different categories of art. I think it was in part funded by Charles Haywood, who's another guy in our sphere, who's part of the Worthy House and or the founder of the Worthy House. And so it's a great example of the people in our sphere kind of taking back the culture, putting together a prize and a project to kind of generate a lot of activity, a lot of writing. And you were just mentioning how it's hard to find time to write. I bet, because I know you were submitting to Passage Prize, having a deadline was a helpful thing there.
Huge. And you know, I didn't win, but the prize, you know, I thought like basically I could justify it to myself. I could say, you know, this is time where I could maybe make some money and get some exposure, and like there's a reason to do it. I wouldn't be shouting into the void. And I think, you know, like I've got a little bit of a platform personally, but I think for people who don't, but who have something really good to say, it's great because it's like, you know, if I put some fiction on my Substack, some people would read it and that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But like a lot of these guys don't feel like they have anywhere to put their good stuff. And so as a matter of fact, we're actually planning to get into that game.
Awesome.
And to finance some prizes. And
I love it.
Yeah, and definitely in cooperation and consultation with the Passage Prize guys. We're, you know, that's I mean, who knows what shape that will take, but we'd like to be helping them in
100%.
their goal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the more activity we have, you know, not even just financial, but in terms of like creating opportunities for recognition, because frankly, I think that's what a lot of people, what drives them to create. Like, you know, well, more money is always good. I won't say no to more money,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, like I write primarily so I can get my work out there, so people can read it, so people can, you know, tell me what they think and be, you know, moved by it or not or whatever, but to get my voice out there. And I think that to the extent people on our side can create a Passage Prize, or, not to put words in your mouth, an exit prize or something of that nature, it creates it draws energy, and that's good. It draws people to, you know, productive cultural action.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to. A lot of what drove Exit in general, like the startup, why I chose to do it, was that so many of our guys would be like, why isn't anybody speaking out? Why isn't anybody creating cultural content? Why are we constantly on the ropes and on the run? And my attitude toward, like, if nobody's doing the thing that you feel they should do and everybody kind of agrees should do it, then like there's some incentive structure that's wrong. Like don't blame it. Like, it's not like the, you know, it's like the pandas in the zoo. It's not like the moral fiber of the panda is deficient.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's something wrong with the habitat. There's some kind of incentive structure is wrong, because they're the same pandas that they were, you know, 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
And they were breeding just fine back then. So what happened? And I think with culture creation, yeah, you have to create an ecosystem. Like, we have a couple guys who came into the group with like with political activism experience, because they're like former Bernie bros, or they're
wow. Okay.
You know, we actually attract quite a few people who are like, you know, I'm dug in like a tick into this system that is horrible and I hate it, but like there's no right-wing counterpart for me to jump to. The infrastructure is non-existent.
Yeah.
So when those guys come to me, I kind of go like, you know, look, I don't have an immediate easy answer for you, but this is what we're trying to build. This is the infrastructure. And like, those are big muscle moves. Those are tough to do, but they have to be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, creating the space for people to feel the incentive to do those things. Like you mentioned on your pod, a guy who founded or is in the process of founding an all boys school rooted in the classics, teaching children what they should be learning. And I know a guy in our space who's also trying to do that, and it's great to see, you know, this kind of passion, this energy to do stuff like that.
So much of the you know, again, our parents and our grandparents generation, it's not so much that they like didn't share these these desires and these values. They just didn't think that they would be gone. They didn't think it
Yeah.
would fall out from under them. And like scouting, you know, when I was a kid, scouting was like, it was kind of lame. It was like computer merit badges and like citizenship in the community. And like, you know, there's a lot that was, but there was a lot that was cool about it too. And it definitely was not a place where you were going to learn about your, you know, where you're going to stick your dick. Like it just wasn't on the radar. The answer was nowhere. And you know, the people felt that those institutions would stay with them. They felt that they would have that to rely on. And I think about like one of the ways that they trace the decline of the Roman Empire in Europe is the pottery.
Mm.
Because it goes from like there's really fine, beautiful pottery shards from, and it's like there's like one, I can't remember if it's like North Africa or Greece, but there's like one place where all these pots come from and they're all over Europe.
All right.
And then all of a sudden the pots stop, and then it's like these wonky, weird, like not very skillfully created vessels, because you still got to have pots. But the trade route broke down, and now there's barbarians taking tolls, and you can't get the nice North African kind.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're up against right now, is like we're having to develop our own culture from scratch, because our access to high quality, I mean, like if I could send my kids to a school where they had trained educators who like were good at it, and like I wouldn't want them to go to like even the kind of school that I went to as a kid, which was not, you know, paused, and we weren't learning about that kind of thing. But even that was not acceptable. It was not a good model. But like if I could send my kids somewhere to be educated where I would trust they would get a good education, I would prefer that to nothing but homeschooling. Like it would be good if we had these shared cultural products that made it easier to acculturate our children, but we don't. So I'm stuck here trying to teach my kid reading and math, and it's like that shitty pot that's not obviously not as good, but I got to make it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you said something very insightful about the difference in expectations between the boomers and the millennials. And the boomers, I don't think they quite, like frankly, our parents, I don't think they quite understand what has been lost. They, you know, they grew up in an era where, you know, they kind of loosened all the rules, but also enjoyed the fruits of the order from an earlier time. And so what the millennials inherited was all that order. That order is gone, and the rule loosening has led to you know, very anti-human behaviors that have become propagated and, you know, and in fact kind of institutionalized. And yeah, so like they, you know, it's I'm sure you're familiar with the civilizational theory, the four turnings, and the millennials are a hero archetype, our generation. And so I guess in some respects, you know, if you are inheriting a fallen society, it does fall upon you to try to fix it, to try to, you know, put that society to rights. And I think that's what Exit is trying to do. That's what we're all trying to do.
The hero archetype is a responsibility. It's not a prophecy.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We can totally fuck it up and and fail catastrophically. And you know, I think by and large, by and large, we will fail. But something's going to succeed. And so the goal is to get as many people trying things as possible. And I actually had a guy reach out to me, a good friend of mine, reach out and say, watch out for the second mover in your.
Oh yeah.
Like, don't figure out the answers to all these like structural questions of how to run this thing and then have somebody else be the Facebook to your MySpace and learn from all your mistakes and do it better and do it quicker and eat your lunch. And my answer to that was, if somebody figures out a way to do this better, I'll go join his thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll have my guys join his thing. And like, it's about getting it done. And yeah, we are in this really, really dire a situation, but I actually am pretty encouraged by the quality of, just the quality of guys that my group attracted in the early days. Like, I didn't do anything other than just sort of make the pitch. And all of a sudden I've got these guys who are just incredibly successful, incredibly talented, incredibly smart, incredibly dedicated to each other.
Yeah. That's
it
great.
Just kind of fell in my lap. And I think partly that's because if you've got just an ounce of integrity, you find this situation intolerable.
Yeah. There's
can't
a hunger for this.
Yeah.
One thing, and I won't keep you too long. I know we're coming up on 1.5 hours here, but I wanted to discuss remote work. It's a seismic shift, and this presents, we're here talking about ways to kind of like hold on and change the culture. Well, there is the potential with remote work for exiting the US and living in a culture that is, yes, US hegemony kind of infects most of the West, but like I from what I understand, things are maybe better in Hungary, Poland. I certainly think Latin America, they don't really care as much. It's the machismo cultures. Like, I think you're going to have, the woke stuff is a hard sell when like the cartel is running the, that said, you don't necessarily want to live under the thumb of a cartel. So, right. What do you think about the possibilities for remote work enabling people to exit the United States?
I honestly think it's just as important that they can exit the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
I think the increased mobility is already creating some of the like laboratory of democracy type thing that federalism was supposed to do and doesn't really do, but I think there's immense, and like New Hampshire is a very different state because of all the libertarians that move there.
Yeah.
And it's not they're not going to secede anytime soon, but it matters that they're there.
Yeah.
And so I see it as, again, it's a spectrum. Like and people do have this tendency to catastrophize because they're like, oh, look what, if they want you, they'll get you because of what happened to, Snowden and Assange and like Seth Rich. And it's like, bro, you're not that important. Like, you can hide. You can run to Paraguay and they will not care. They'll let you go to Paraguay. And I think
absolutely, like,
certainly in the near term. And I also think that like you have to understand that every action that you take and every action that the regime takes against you, there's costs. And you can totally be mobile in ways that are much lower cost to you than chasing you costs the regime.
Absolutely.
Like, like your goal is to be as free as you can be in ways that are illegible to them, are hard for them to chase down, are hard for them to attack. And so, I mean, I view it, just getting out of corporate employment, not having a W-2, immediately you've completely changed the math on how hard it is to get you. We've had so that my little group of like Latter-day Saint guys that I was part of on Twitter, like when I got doxxed. I mean, I got doxxed as part of a group of guys. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting because there were 3 or 4 guys operating under their real names, but they were either working for a small company where they knew the boss and the boss was on side, or they were self-employed. And none of those guys were even targeted.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
they said the same stuff everybody else said, but it just wasn't worth the effort.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to go to a whole different dimension of ways to attack them. And so, like, you know, it's not inevitable. It's inevitable that you'll make enemies. It's not inevitable that they'll be able to destroy you.
Yeah.
And so this back to this jurisdictional question, getting out of your city, getting out of your state, getting out of the country, you know, there's sort of different levels. And I think it absolutely will change the math on what I see it doing right now. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who are looking real hard at Arkansas, Tennessee, Eastern Oklahoma, these places that are like actually like beautiful. I don't know if you've ever seen Eastern Oklahoma, but it's like hilly and pretty.
Oh,
and
wow.
green.
Yeah.
The west, the farther west you go, the more it becomes plains, but the eastern part is nice. And there's all these beautiful natural places that are going to become really attractive places to live once there's Starlink.
Yeah.
And
that makes a lot of sense, that you don't need to leave the United States. You just need to be part of a community where you can send your kids to school and they're not going to learn about these things that are harmful and wrong. And
maybe for some, leaving the country is the move, and maybe for all of us, eventually leaving the country is the move. But like, there's gradations.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you leave the country, well, like, I don't know too many I know like 1 or 2 actually, but I don't know too many Hungarians. I certainly don't know any like Colombians. So yeah, it's a
ton of depth in Colombia or Hungary yet. But you know, inshallah.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think is there anything you want to talk about more, or I think
you asked why I was fraternal.
Yeah. Let's dig into that.
Yeah, I mean, I can make it quick. But basically, part of our vision, part of what we believe is that men and women are different and they have a different trajectory. And so creating a situation where women are like building really intensive careers is not really like what we're trying to do. We're trying to help them to start families.
Absolutely.
And we're trying to help their husbands to create that. And so like there should be a feminine version of this. It just would look completely different. It would be a completely different offering, and I shouldn't run it.
Yeah.
A woman should run it.
Yeah.
And
no,
so,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also I think that there is I said in my notes, a real disjunction, I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but between the level of risk tolerance on the part of men versus women. Women are just, frankly, they're more agreeable. Well, I mean, it depends on the word, but many of them are just, in general, they're more agreeable than men.
Higher agreeableness, higher conscientiousness. Yeah,
exactly. And men, you know, if there's someone who sees the current, and frankly, the current structure is profoundly, well, it's anti-family, so it's anti-man and anti-woman. But I think men are really getting the real short end of the stick here. So it's the more
certainly in the short term.
Yeah.
Certainly in the short term. I think the math will flip. I mean, it's fun. Basically, you look at who has the harder time at what stage of life under which system. In the more traditional frame, mom is having kids in her 20s and 30s, and she's very, very busy, very tired, lots of demands on her body, lots of demands on her time. And then the kids grow up and they become a support to her later on. Whereas the man has this more like linear trajectory of, I'm working a lot the whole time, and my stressors when I'm 45, 55 are, just as intense professionally. And like, so basically you're looking at like, one of them provides the liberal, the progressive vision of what life should be.
Yeah.
Does make life a lot easier on women in their 20s and 30s, but that has consequences later on.
Absolutely. I think constitutionally, though, as we say, with regard to agreeableness, there's just a strong instinct among many women to kind of assume that the people in control are there for a reason. They want to ally themselves with power, because that in any animal group, that's what obviously we're not animals, but there are certain psychological similarities. They want to protect their young, even if they don't have young. It's just an instinctual thing to want to not risk,
keep things safe.
Yeah. Whereas, men, there's a reason why, there's more potential reward for men, right?
Well, and there's also just like we're talking about, and I tell the guys, like, don't, we're not going to talk about your weird political ideology because it's just a vulnerability for everybody, nor mine. So we're gonna keep we're gonna keep it Joe Rogan. We keep it Joe Rogan in the chat. And so that's not but the point is, when you bring women, especially attractive women, into a group, it's not that she's gonna screw everything up personally. It's that the men are gonna act different.
That's absolutely true.
And the intimacy of what you can share as far as your struggles, and your vision, is just different when there's a lady around. And so we're trying to create a space where that's not. But the fact is, you can't build what we need to build without women being involved. And so,
of course, yeah.
Part of what we do is we have meetups, and the guys bring the wives and kids, and we get together as families. So it's not that they're not involved, but the group itself is for the men.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it is great that you have those meetups, because I was just musing this morning about how my grandparents were like members of the Elks Club, and they would like go out and see other couples they knew and get together. And my parents don't have anything like that. They, the boomers, they didn't preserve that. So they do have other couples they know, but they don't have nearly the community that my grandparents did. And so, go down to millennials, I guess you have your Friendsgivings or whatever, but I don't know if that's gonna stay together into their 40s and 50s. So I think there's a real hunger and need for communal, fraternal groups, and when you bond over shared values, it's such a deeper bond, because especially if those values are in contrast to those of the current regime, it creates a sort of a deeper bond, because you have this kind of shared struggle.
Well, and you just don't have to litigate all of the premises. You can get on to the deeper conversation because you're not having the same freaking argument that you've had a million times on the internet. Like,
absolutely.
So yeah, and we've got probably 3 metros where the guys are dense enough, deep enough that like there's appetite for a every month type of meetup.
Awesome.
And the goal is to build the thing, but we've got 150 guys, and so the goal is to get the waterline up, the total up, so that in every city you've got a dozen guys or 2 dozen guys that you could do a homeschool co-op with, or you could, go bowling, or just get together, on a regular basis. So that's my like near term ambition, is to create more cities where that kind of real life connection is possible, because it has to become real. It can't be Zoom forever. Totally.
100% agreed. Now, if someone wants to join Exit, what do they do?
So it's exitgroup.us. You go there, you sign in, you pay your first month's dues, and then you and I schedule a phone call. And the purpose of that phone call is both to understand like what you could offer the group, what the group could offer you, make sure that it's a fit. I do that with everybody that comes in. So it's if somebody's weird or not a great, potentially a risk, OPSEC risk or something, I put them in. I'm not the FBI, I'm not doing background checks, but there's a sniff test.
Yeah.
And then if it's not a fit, I give you your dues back. And if it is a fit, then you come in. And then we meet together. I think we're up to like 15 or 16 calls every week. So different times a day and different topics. And we figure out what call you need to be part of, and you sort of bounce around for a minute until you figure out what group, whether it's the entrepreneurship group or the tech and crypto, or you want to be involved in the scouting alternative, you want to be involved in the literary competition, you want to be involved in, we've got a tech boot camp and like career recruiting project that we're working on so that we can get our guys trained up in tech skills and then get them into better jobs. Awesome. So it's like, do you want to work on your individual project, or do you want to come work on some of the things that we're doing? And either way is good, but then you'd be connecting with me to find out who in the group you need to be talking to. And so that's how it would work initially.
Yeah. I mean, I am not yet a member of XZ, but I, definitely have benefited from friendships in this sphere. Matt, who I never even met in real life until like 6 months into the podcast, we were just doing Zooms. He's one of my best friends now. And I've met so many like real life friends through shared values and interests, and we've met each other through groups like Exit. So
it's remarkable how many of the guys who are like an anime girl on Twitter are like 6'4" and jacked and handsome and rich and
yeah, I am not actually a Shiba Inu dog, just to though I like them.
But it's a really high quality. It's a wildly it's a statistical anomaly. It's a wildly high quality group of guys in our corner of the internet. And so just the little scoop that I've scooped up has been pretty remarkable. So anyway.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that does it for my questions. If there's any more you'd like to touch on, we have time, but
I'm good, man. I appreciate you taking this time. It's been a really good conversation.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for coming on. And, I'm really enjoyed reading about Exit. I'm going to read a lot more. And again, please keep writing fiction, because that was one of the best short stories I've read coming out of our side of the internet. And trust me, I've read a lot. Not to put anyone down, but it was very good.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. extradeadjcb.substack.com. You can go read Amira. It's on there.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording.